online or in the room. So, Excellencies, dear colleagues, dear all, good morning to who is with us at Palais des Nations. Good morning and good afternoon to our online panelists. And good morning, good afternoon, or good evening to who is watching the video of this event. The Geneva Environment Network is joining the permanent mission of the United Arab Emirates to the United Nations Office and other international organizations in Geneva in welcoming you today for a briefing in preparation of the United Nations Climate Change Conference, COP28, that will kick off in Dubai at the end of this month, under the presidency of the United Arab Emirates. I am Diana Rizzolio, the coordinator of the Geneva Environment Network, and I will have the pleasure to moderate this session. There is no doubt that international Geneva is mobilized in the fight against the triple interconnected planetary crisis of climate change, biodiversity loss, and pollution that the Earth is facing, and that is threatening the well-being and survival of millions of people around the world. When it comes to climate action in international Geneva, the Secretariat of the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, or IPCC, and the World Meteorological Organization, bringing to us the scientific evidence of climate change and other important data and knowledge to mitigate and adapt to its impacts, are probably the two institutions most quoted on this matter. However, it is now well recognized that in addition to these two important bodies, the numerous international organizations, permanent missions, non-governmental organizations, and other institutions based in Geneva place the climate issue at the heart of their work. As the world capital for multilateralism, Geneva is at the center of numerous debates and negotiations in the fields of science, health, human rights, development, trade and green finance, employment, peace building and security, disaster risk reduction, humanitarian response, nature conservation, chemicals and pollution, as well as new technologies and innovation. This interdisciplinarity allows International Geneva to have unique cross-disciplinary expertise on climate, this theme being on the agenda of numerous deliberations. And we have invited some key Geneva stakeholders to join us today to share what they plan to bring to Dubai to accelerate climate action. However, if we had to have on stage the numerous actors of International Geneva that are contributing to a more ambitious climate action, there wouldn't be a room with a podium large enough to fit them. We have, however, today ensured representativeness on thematics that will have their specific day at COP28. Let me also mention that Geneva is not only contributing in terms of substance to the climate negotiation, but also with logistics, and I'm mentioning that as we have also in this room colleagues from UNOC. Indeed, as we are here at the headquarters of the United Nations office in Geneva, I would also like to refer to our conference services colleagues, as well as the security guards that welcome you this morning, who regularly make our convenings possible and who regularly join our colleagues from the UN Climate Change Secretariat to support their meetings around the world. As you are about to be welcomed by the hosts of COP28 and the last COP, let me just highlight that as the Secretary General of the United Nations regularly mentions, COP28 must be the place to urgently close the climate ambition gap, as emissions continue to rise, as it has been illustrated in the various reports and statements that the UN system and other actors have been issuing in the past months and weeks, including the latest UNEP emissions gap report issued yesterday. The latest IPCC assessment has concluded that there are multiple feasible and effective options to reduce greenhouse gas emissions and adapt to human-caused climate change, and they are available now. We'll now move to the opening session of the event, where you will be formally welcomed by the permanent representatives of the host country of the last UN Climate Change Conference and the upcoming conference. We'll start by our hosts today. I invite His Excellency Ambassador Jamal Al-Musharak, the new permanent representative of the United Nations Arab Emirates to the United Nations Office and other international organizations in Geneva, to deliver opening remarks. And His Excellency presented yesterday his credentials as permanent representative to the Director General of the UN Office here in Geneva. We welcome all His Excellency to Geneva and look forward to engage further with him and his team. Excellency, you have the floor.
Thank you very much for this introduction. You touched on a lot of important points, and it's a pleasure for me to be in a meeting of such importance and such magnitude and really impact to the lives of everyone around the world, hopefully in a positive manner. That's what we strive for as the United Arab Emirates, as the host. At the outset, I'd like to thank our partner, Geneva Environment Network, for making this timely event also possible. We are under 10 days away from COP28 in Dubai. At the beginning, at the outset, I'd like to, on behalf of the UAE, thank once again Ambassador Jamal al-Din and laud the Egyptian presidency of COP27, and in particular the establishment of a loss and damage fund, which is agreed on, the first fund dedicated to addressing climate-driven damage. Our distinguished speakers here today and participants demonstrate the commitment of being capable and having as many voices around the table, being as inclusive as possible during COP28. The concept of consensus for us remains the prerequisite for the discussions which will take place. Our shared goal as an international community is to achieve tangible outcomes, and that's what we strive for through COP28, and to utilize multilateralism as a tool to do so, and not merely stand on the ceremony. This is indeed added pressure on us, especially here as we gather in this Palais des Nations. But we have come a long way since the Paris Agreement, make no mistake. But it is only through our unity and our foresight as the only option that will drive us forward, leaving no one behind. Excellencies, colleagues, finance must aim to synergize the Global South's climate action and development ambitions. And finance will remain essential in our efforts. And this will require, of course, our shared input to renew the mindset of financial institutions. We believe that trust is also a key word in COP28 that will guide us, along with inclusivity that is open to the voices of women, youth, indigenous people, in addition to businesses, governments, civil society, academia, tech, industry, and of course the health sector. And today we will hear from many of these voices. As we've mentioned time and time again, all voices are welcome and all voices are significant. And we look forward to a COP28 based on results and not only words and discussions driven by consensus and trust. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Excellency. The permanent representative of Egypt was a champion in making synergies with institutions in Geneva in the run-up to last year's COP27. His Excellency Ahmed Abdallah Gamal al-Din, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Moderator. His Excellency Ambassador Jamal al-Musharraf, Permanent Representative of the United Arab Emirates to the United Nations Office and other international organizations in Geneva, I welcome you to Geneva. His Excellency Ambassador Majid al-Suwaidi, Director General and Special Representative of COP28, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, it is an esteemed pleasure to be with you today, and I would like to express my deep thanks to His Excellency Ambassador Jamal al-Musharraf and to his active DPR, Madam Lubna Qasim, for the kind invitation. My thanks go also to the Geneva Environment Network Coordinator, Madam Diana Rizzolio. As you all know, climate change is a global challenge that requires international cooperation and multilateral solutions. Therefore, COP28 is a critical moment for the world, as we must collectively agree on decisive action to continue our inclusive, just, and effective tackling of climate change, guided by science and anchored in our agreed principles. During Egypt's presidency of COP27, We were committed to reinstate climate justice and advance implementation while promoting the principles of equity, sustainable development, effective actions, and no backsliding. Many achievements were made in all climate tracks in COP27, including loss and damage, mitigation, adaptation, finance, and just transition. We are relying on COP28 with its bold vision to build on these outcomes and to deliver on several pressing issues awaiting resolution. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, we are not on track to meet the goals of the Paris Agreement. We need to do more to reduce emissions, support adaptation, and build resilience to climate change. We need to galvanize the political will to fulfill pledges and commitments and to provide the necessary means of implementation for developing countries, including technology and the appropriate financial resources, in order to address the existential threat of climate change and enable developing countries to implement their nationally determined contributions and increase their ambition. We need to avoid backtracking on earlier commitments, which we are witnessing in many instances, especially in developed countries. We need to prioritize multilateral solutions and avoid the temptation of resorting to unilateral measures, either through incentives or taxes. We count on COP28 to deliver a strong and ambitious outcome. We are confident that the UAE, through its wise leadership, will manage to achieve a balanced, yet effective and ambitious package, which will support a just pathway for our future collective actions. I thank you.
Thank you, Excellency. We mentioned the need of high ambition at COP28. After these opening remarks, we have the pleasure to be joined online by the Director General and Special Representative for COP28, His Excellency Ambassador Majid Al-Suwaidi. Excellency, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. Your Excellencies, colleagues, it's a pleasure to be able to speak with you today. And before I start, I'd like to express my gratitude to Ambassador Jamal Al-Musharraf and his team at the UAE mission in Geneva for making today a possibility. Colleagues, we're now mere days away from the inauguration of COP28. We're in the home stretch, and I would like to take this opportunity to reflect on the year-long efforts that our office has carried out. As all of you know, the year leading up to COP has been extremely challenging, particularly for those communities on the front lines of the climate crisis. Communities and ecosystems around the world have been hard hit by extreme, unpredictable weather. We have seen record high temperatures on land and sea. We've witnessed dramatic droughts and floods. All in all, we have seen the planet sending us warnings that the window to achieve our climate goals is narrowing. At COP28, we have an opportunity to strengthen global solidarity, agree on the way forward to correct the course of our global climate action, and inspire change and hope. We know for a fact that the Paris Agreement has helped bring us from a 4+ degrees Celsius trajectory to a 2.4 degree one. It has also helped bring clarity that we should strive to keep global average temperatures rise to 1.5 degrees C. We must treat adaptation and mitigation with equal priority and importance, that all countries must continue to endeavor to move further and faster on climate together. Despite all of this, we're still facing large gaps across all of the pillars of the Paris Agreement. At COP28, we will come to a moment of truth when we as a global community respond to the first inaugural Global Stocktake. We will signal to the world how we intend to address the gaps that we need to bridge in the face of ever-increasing and ever-worsening climate impacts. Done correctly, it can set the highest bar for ambition, while recognizing the different starting points for every party and ensuring equity for all. This is the message that we have shared with the world throughout this year. We have heavily engaged with political leaders, academics, the civil society, and the real economy to set COP28 for success. Since January, we have traveled the world to listen, learn, and build consensus. In just over a week, parties and non-party stakeholders across all sectors of society and the economy will come together to show how they are moving from words to action. We want COP28 to help facilitate the transformation of our economies, protect lives and livelihoods, safeguard our shared future, and keep the goals of the Paris Agreement within reach. For that to happen, we have based our strategy on a 4-point action plan. This includes fast-tracking a just and orderly energy transition, fixing climate finance and delivering on previous promises, placing nature, people, lives, and livelihoods at the heart of climate action, and finally, underpinning all action with full inclusivity. On the first point, we need to rapidly build the energy system of tomorrow, free of unabated fossil fuels while decarbonizing the energy we use today. It's not a question of if we need an energy transition, but how fast and how can we do it in an equitable, managed, and just manner that leaves no one behind. It will require hard discussions, it will take vision, and it will take unprecedented levels of international collaboration and cooperation. But together, we can find a common way forward. To build the energy system of tomorrow, the COP28 presidency has called for global pledges to triple renewable energy generation capacity to 11,000 gigawatts and double the annual average global rate of energy efficiency improvements by 2030. I'm pleased to share that this has been endorsed by the EU, African Union, Kenya, and the G20, accounting for 85% of the global economy on the renewables tripling. As a side note, I would like to ask the permanent missions attending this briefing to get back to their capitals and expedite their endorsements of this crucial pledge. But this must also come with urgent action to decarbonize the energies we use today, from driving down emissions from heavy emitting sectors, accelerating efforts towards the phase down of unabated coal power, aligning the oil and gas industry around ambitious but achievable decarbonization and methane targets. And on fixing climate finance, we're working to reform the architecture of the global financial system to make it fit for purpose and reflect the realities of today, to ensure that both public and private capital deliver at pace and scale to enable on the achievement of our collective climate ambitions, to ensure that finance is accessible, affordable, and is flowing to where it's needed the most. At the same time, we're calling for the reform of multilateral development banks and the international financial institutions so that they can work better together as a system, scale up adaptation finance, better leverage private finance, take on more risk, and rechannel special drawing rights for climate action. We welcome the recent OECD report that the 100 billion is likely met last year, but we continue to urge contributing countries to deliver on the 100 billion commitment this year, to concretely show how they will deliver the doubling of adaptation finance over 2019 levels by 2025, and to seek further enhance adaptation support and ensure an ambitious second replenishment of the Green Climate Fund. We need early pledges on loss and damage. Another priority of ours is delivering on adaptation and resilience, with a focus making people, nature, lives, and livelihoods at the heart of climate action. It is imperative that at COP28, we make huge strides to facilitate the implementation of a global goal on adaptation, a framework that enables us to move beyond business as usual approach to adaptation, which has clearly failed us given the large gap we face in adaptation. We are supporting this objective by launching and asking parties for the endorsement of several political declarations. Our presidency has created the Emirates Declaration on Sustainable Agriculture, Resilient Food Systems, and Climate Action, which cements leader-level commitments to transform agri-food systems. Raising the political visibility of health and climate, we developed the COP28 Declaration on Climate and Health to build consensus on the health system's response to climate change and to secure financing commitments for implementation. We're also promoting a global cooling pledge to reduce global cooling-related emissions by countries committing to improve the efficiency of appliances and broadening access to efficient cooling. As you know, inclusion has been the cornerstone of the COP28 presidency. We're striving to have the voices and contributions from every country, every community, every sector, and every citizen. To that end, we have created a gender-responsive just transition and climate action partnership, which builds consensus around policy and finance to improve gender equality and decent work through the just transition. We cannot ignore that half of the least developed countries are affected by conflict or fragility, and they rely on a small number of increasingly overwhelmed humanitarian actors. The costs of inaction are high, risking further destabilization, displacement, loss and damage, and reversal of development gains. To address this, we have created the Climate Relief, Recovery, and Peace Declaration for countries and partners to make a collective commitment to increase action, investment, and absorption capacity in communities affected by conflict or protracted humanitarian crisis. The declaration will be accompanied by a package of finance policy programs and practices for operationalization. Just last month, we hosted 70 ministers and 100 delegations from around the world for what was the largest pre-COP to date. Some notable highlights include meaningful progress made on the development of the outline for the Global Stocktake decision at COP28. On difficult subjects, negotiators made good progress on building consensus and momentum to finding landing zones. Key stakeholders and parties came together to advance discussions on non-negotiated outcomes from energy and finance to nature, food, and youth and health. In addition, I'm very pleased to say that we've reached a significant breakthrough on reaching a robust set of recommendations for operationalizing the Loss and Damage Fund and funding arrangements at the 5th Transitional Committee meeting in Abu Dhabi. These recommendations pave the way for agreement at COP28 and marks a crucial step forward in responding to the needs of the most vulnerable. Although much of the work still lies ahead of us, the momentum coming out of pre-COP and the TC5 meeting is a positive signal for what is to come at COP28. It's also an important reminder that multilateralism can and must deliver. We are very clear that this is a good outcome and everyone should stand behind it. We need all parties now to agree on these recommendations at COP28. The global community demands real action, and we must rise up to meet their expectations. We must restore trust in multilateralism, and I ask that we all come prepared for COP28, prepared to contribute, collaborate, and deliver. COP28 must be the moment when our ambitions become actions and promises become progress. I thank you all for the time today, and I look forward to any questions. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Excellency, for your clear message of hope for COP28 and highlighting the presidency action plan and priorities. The cost of inaction are indeed high. We will now move to updates on preparation for COP28, and we are joined online by two key stakeholders. We have Daniele Violetti, who is joining us from the UN Climate Change Secretariat, who will start first on updating us on what is expecting us in Dubai. Daniele, you have the floor.
Thank you. Good morning to all of you, excellencies, delegates, colleagues. First of all, thanks for the invitation, the opportunity to share with you a few thoughts as we move very, very fast to the opening of COP28 in Dubai. And a lot has been already said, so I will really touch upon a few of the expectation for the main deliverables of COP28 and of course, engaging in any discussion. It was mentioned that the Global Stocktake, the first Global Stocktake, is the key outcome of COP28. And likely it will show that we are far from the trajectory we need to be. But therefore, we do expect that the GST will become a course correction moment by sending the political signals on the need to enhance action by governments, non-party stakeholders across all areas, mitigation, adaptation, loss and damage, means implementation, in particular of finance. So in the process, we recently completed the so-called technical dialogue under the the Global Stocktake, and again, and not surprisingly, the final report of the dialogue did confirm that we are still far from a path leading to limiting global warming to 1.5 or even 2 degrees. But also the technical assessment has shown a few positive findings. First, the report noted that Paris Agreement has already intensified climate action and related support, and leading also to a reduction in the forecast of global warming. Numbers have been already mentioned, but that's an important trend that we should really look with great attention and motivation. And then, of course, this is meaningful, but is by far sufficient. So the technical dialogue also confirmed that, as consistent with earlier findings by the IPCC, that now sufficient cost-effective opportunities to address the 2030 emission gap, even if with significant challenges, exist. And one of the biggest challenges is access and availability of support. So these are the opportunities that needs to be harnessed and at the required pace and scale. And lastly, it has been reiterated that international cooperation is the one that can help share experiencing in realizing opportunities, overcoming barriers and challenges in the implementation of adaptation plans, for example, and promote learning from group practice across various contexts and sectors. So with this technical background, the political phase of the Global Stocktake is happening now and culminating at COP28. We see intense political discussion ongoing, including at the pre-COP was mentioned, a very important milestone this year. And they indicated that clearly parties are committed to achieve a good, ambitious outcome from the Stocktake, but it's clear that there are still significant divergences in the understanding of what that ambitious outcome should contain and how should be articulated. So that's the part that we really need to look forward in terms of having the multilateral process delivering on this critical milestone. But this is not the only one. COP28 is not only the Global Stocktake. There are many others which have been indicated, but implementation of climate action is really a complex, multifaceted process, and this COP28 should address a large variety of issues in order to move implementation forward. Loss and damage, just transition, adaptation, mitigation, finance are at the center of the expectation for COP28. Loss and damage, of course, building on the landmark COP27 decision in Sharm el-Sheikh on a fund to address loss and damage, has to be now moved to the implementation phase. Together also, and let's not forget that the operationalization of the Santiago network for loss and damage is another important critical milestone that needs to deliver. And this will support the effort to make the international climate change regime fully fit for purpose for addressing loss and damage. And this is going to be really a major outcome. We are really pleased with the recommendation of the Transitional Committee. The 5th meeting in Abu Dhabi was able to deliver a set of recommendations, and this will be really putting a positive narrative on the COP and what can be achieved. The global goal on adaptation, again, another important milestone, including a solid methodological framework. This is expected to be another major outcome, which will complete, in a way, the 3 pillars of the Paris Agreement. And we have goals on mitigation, we have goals on finance. That's the one on global goal adaptation that will be the one still missing, but we are confident that COP28 will be able to deliver on that. And this will help strengthen adaptation efforts at all levels, local, national, and regional, and underpin the planning and implementation of adaptation actions. Mitigation, of course, the ongoing mitigation work program will need to be assessed at COP28 with the view of making it more efficient and more impactful. in the light of the urgent need to address the emission gap. As we recently published our flagship report, the NDC synthesis report, just a few days back, we have, identified some positive trends, but again, mitigation action remains at the center if you want to meet the mid-century goal, and of course, together with the outcome of the Global Stocktake, to inform the next round of NDCs to be submitted in 2025, which will take us to the end of this critical decade. Finance, again, finance is cross-cutting, is everywhere. It's in every COP is center of the negotiation and expected outcomes, and this one will not be different. Information on the delivery on the billion were referred to. Positive signals, positive narrative. Maybe the full finance data will not be available, but this positive indication hopefully will set the tone for discussions in a positive way, and then other expectations in the same space are relating to a robust replenishment of the Green Climate Fund. Again, we have reached in the Green Climate Fund replenishment process an important outcome, but still donors are missing. So we do expect something coming by the time of COP28, which will be, again, very important, together with contribution to the adaptation fund. So completing the package of these. Then there will be important discussion we do expect on a new collective quantified goal on climate finance. It's not a deliverable for COP28, it has to be delivered at COP29, but still we need to see progress in that discussion will give a level of comfort that we are on track for delivering well next year. And we do expect also discussion on how we can make financial flow consistent with the objective of the Paris Agreement. It was mentioned also the international financial system response to the call for reform. I do imagine there will be discussion on that and taking stock of what progress has been achieved in this year. I mentioned the work program on just transition. This is another important deliverable, was established formally at COP27, but now is the time for defining the substantive content, the scope, modalities, timelines. So these are very important negotiations because everybody is keen to move in the next phase of the process under this umbrella of just transition, making sure that nobody is left behind in this process and whole society climate action that is needed. So I mentioned briefly the new collective quantified goal for next year. Another progress we do expect in the COP28 again for next year is the work on the enhanced transparency framework in the sense that the first biennial transparency reports are due in 2024. So we have to make sure that everything is on track for those which are the very important pillar of the overall Paris Agreement. So these are the negotiating items, and of course there is plenty of climate action and was referred to earlier in terms of initiative declarations. So it's not only the formal outcome that make the contour of the overall success of COP28, but scaling up of action by non-party stakeholders in the framework of the action agenda. So to demonstrate immediate response of the real world, including policy, finance, technology solutions, and of course we're going to have the World Climate Action Summit with leaders at the very beginning, so that they set the political tone for the ambition at COP. So all this is going to be very intense conference as always are, but this is a particularly important one, and will be difficult, of course. We are ready for that, but we are confident that the outcomes of COP28 will make really an important contribution to strengthening climate action further. and then to respond and put us really on the right path on the goals of the Paris Agreement and beyond over time. So I will stop here, and again, if there are questions, happy to. But again, thanks for inviting, and thanks for all the participants, all the institutions and colleagues that are contributing to the work of our process. And I'm sure I will see many of you in Dubai in a few days. Thank you very much. Over to you.
Thank you, Mr. Violetti, for summarizing key elements on which COP28 needs to deliver. Updates on preparations will now be completed by Mr. Jamie Dean, who is the Head of Operations and Guest Services for the COP28 presidency, who is also joining us online. Mr. Dean, you have now the floor.
Excellencies, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, very good afternoon from Dubai. Good morning to those in Geneva. With 9 days to go, we are all much looking forward to welcoming everybody to Expo City, the host of COP28. I would just like to spend the next few minutes just to give everybody a little bit of an overview and an understanding of the site operations and some of the logistics that you will experience during your time here at COP28. And just would like to touch on some of the journey, the customer journey that you will all be undertaking whilst you arrive in Dubai. Next slide, please. So on your arrival in the UAE, we've taken steps to ensure that your arrival at the airport and your experience is as smooth as possible. We've included fast-track passport control, and we've also got a number of help desks and various transport options ready for everyone arriving at either Dubai International Airport, Abu Dhabi Airport, or indeed Sharjah. With regards to the visas, we've understood that there have been previous challenges around visas and some barriers in place from some countries. To counter this, we've worked really closely with the immigration authorities and the UNFCCC to develop what we've termed a COP28 special entry permit, which can be applied for electronically by all registered Blue Zone participants. And I'm sure most people have already applied for that COP28 visa already. It's a free of charge visa, and it's working very well. And over 30,000 COP28 visas have already been issued. With regards to the accommodation, we know that there have been huge amounts of challenges with previous COPs and accommodation. And in that fact, we developed a COP28 accommodation portal, which is available through the COP28 website, which has been working extremely well and has received great traction to date. We're fortunate enough to have over 800 hotels ranging from 2 to 5 star here in Dubai. So everything is working well. With regards to the free transport, that we will be providing everybody with a free transport Knoll card, which allows everybody to travel free of charge on the metro, which the metro runs from the airport all the way through to the heart of Expo City. And we recognize the real importance of that and getting good connectivity through to the site. With regards to the Wi-Fi, we will be providing state-of-the-art Wi-Fi, which is secure and tested, 5G connectivity across both the Blue Zone and the Green Zone. So all delegates will have very good access to that. With regards to the digital elements, the COP28 app is now live, and again will cater for everyone for the Green Zone and the Blue Zone participants. And this will enable everybody to get access to all the event-related information, the venue details, and information about facilities in and around Expo City. And the COP28 website, in parallel, continues to be updated with very detailed FAQs. There will be virtual participation capability, which will increase, obviously, opportunities for everybody to engage in COP. and that is all being managed by the UNFCCC. There will be computer centers strategically located near the meeting rooms. And there will also be a services hub, which will be a dedicated hub centrally located in the Blue Zone. And everyone will be able to access and speak to our trained staff regarding a range of different services, such as accessibility, transport, accommodation, lost and found, commercial catering, etc. Accessibility has really been at the heart of the planning for us throughout COP28. To support this experience, we've dedicated assistance desk in the registration hall and within the services hub. There will also be commercial interpretation to support effective meetings and events, and it'll be possible to book this commercial interpretation. First aid, your safety is of, and everybody's safety is of paramount importance, and as such, we'll have dedicated medical rooms and emergency rooms and services on hand to assist should they be required. To support a positive and sustainable experience at COP28, we'll be providing free water refill stations. There are 39 across the Expo City site, and the venue will be complimentary, and we'll be offering every single UNFCCC Blue Zone delegate a reusable water bottle, which can be used throughout COP28. And catering, we know the real importance of healthy and nutritious food, and price sensitive, of course, and indeed providing everybody with good coffee throughout COP28. So there will be 16 restaurants in the Blue Zone. There'll be 26 food trucks across the site and numerous grab and go points as well. There is a dedicated online catering portal as well, which is available through the COP28 website. There are also convenience stores available for people to purchase everyday products, and there will be lounge areas and several throughout the site, indoors and outdoors, where people can rest, network, and catch up with colleagues. Next slide, please. Thank you. This gives you a sneak preview of the site footprint of the Blue Zone and the Green Zone delineation. It will slightly change after days 1 to 3, where we have the World Climate Action Summit, which will see the delineation of the Al Wasl Dome there moves from the Blue Zone into the Green Zone. You can see at the top is where the metro is, and everybody will come in through their metro. That's the Blue Zone UNFCCC accredited participants. And as you enter into the site, on the left is the DEC North, which will be where the COP28 UAE presidency spaces will be. And then on the right is the Dubai Exhibition South, which will be where the Blue Zone meeting rooms, negotiating meeting rooms, plenaries and bilateral meeting rooms will take place. As you move further into the site, on the left and on the right are the Blue Zone party pavilions and the networking spaces. Next slide, please. And finally, this gives you an overview of the Green Zone site map. The COP28 presidency has a really different approach to the Green Zone, offering the private sector an opportunity to showcase their contributions and solutions to the global climate challenge. There will be 2 entry points into the Green Zone directly from the Blue Zone, ensuring real connectivity between the Blue Zone and the Green Zone, something that's not been available at previous COPs, and this will allow for greater connectivity between the 2 sites. There will on the exterior be 4 general entry points from the outer side of the Green and for non-Blue Zone attendees to encourage climate-curious visitors to enjoy the features of the Green Zone. There will be 4 hubs within the Green Zone spanning 27,000 square meters. These hubs cover 4 different themes: energy, transition, climate finance, technology, and innovation and knowledge. There are a vast range of venues ranging from theatres, presentation spaces, to stages and open spaces. Events will include everything from panel talks and roundtables through to arts and cultural activities for audiences of 50 right through to 3,000. And there are plenty of places for interest such as the Expo 2020 Dubai Anchor Pavilions and also the Al Wasl Plaza, which is a unique venue which features a 360-degree dome with immersive projection capabilities on a structure spanning 130 meters wide by 67 meters high, surreal water fountain. Hopefully that gives everybody a good insight into what to expect for COP28. We much look forward to welcoming you. Many thanks.
Thank you very much, Mr. Dean. And with apologies for who is in the room who couldn't see, only saw your face at the end of your intervention. So we have now finished on the updates from the hosts of COP28 on the preparations, and we will now move to the inputs on contributions of International Geneva to this important negotiation. And as I mentioned earlier, most institutions in multilateral Geneva are contributing to the climate agenda, and the podium wouldn't be big enough to have them all on stage. But the selection of organizations contributing to some of the key thematics of COP28 have joined the panel. The international experts taking the floor at this event will highlight how the International Geneva multilateral diplomacy system is engaged in contributing to climate action at COP28. Most of them will be attending later this month the climate change conference, and each has 5 minutes to provide the challenges for their sector and how they will be addressing it at COP28. And we will start with the World Meteorological Organization. We have with us one of the Geneva climate champions. Elena Manaikova is the Deputy Secretary General of the World Meteorological Organization. Elena, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Diane, and thank you for having me here. And I would like to offer the huge welcome to new Ambassador Al-Musharraf. Welcome to Geneva. And it's hard to speak about my sector challenges because for WMO, the challenge is that the climate science should serve every sector. And I've been talking here in this room about climate and disasters, climate and energy on several occasions on ECOSOC. And we all concluded that the climate change and climate action and climate impacts actually affect everybody, and everyone is interconnected. So our big challenge is that how our good science can continuously help health, energy, water management, agriculture, food security, all sectors, so they will all be on the one page. For WMO, we started long before UNFCCC was created about climate change, and we're proud to be a loyal supporter of the every COP from 1st to 27th, and now coming to 28th. For me personally, it would be 17 COP, which I'm attending in a row. So the great thing which we always feel at WMO, that the climate science is robust, is trustful, and it forms a solid basis of all decisions we take at the COPs and for the countries to in their actions. Science continues to be required, needed, and very, very on demand on different sectors and different nuances. So WMO continues providing scientific assessments, reports, and projections to help with details and nuances. We don't do it alone. We do it in cooperation, not only with Geneva Environment, and that's a contribution of this community here today, but also with the global community of UN and beyond institutions. No surprise, this year WMO releases once again, brings to the COP the State of Climate Report for 2023. We are not yet finished the year. We will come with provisional statement, but those of you who followed our releases recently, a few days ago, the greenhouse gas bulletin was already released, and no surprise, the concentrations of the lead greenhouse gases continues to rise. It's increasing. I cannot disclose you the full figures from the provisional State of Climate Report, but I can say with a high confidence that we are expecting the hottest year on the record, 2023, and most of the climate indicators will show new record values. For us, it means that the impacts and effects on people's lives and on nature and ecosystems and livelihoods is continued to rise and continue to become more significant, more frequent, and more severe. So therefore, in those reports, we increasingly show the disaster effects and different effects on the population and on the sectors. Besides that, this year we are bringing to the COP decadal climate report for the past decade, climate services report on health, and I'm sure that Maria, talking after me, will elaborate on that. A state of global water resources report, this is new. It's never existed before. WMO started doing this very recently, and we were shocked to see that global water resources are demonstrating huge stress points in most parts, in all continents of the world, and this just sustains our wish and our need to bring water into the COP processes and into the decisions. We will come also up this year with a new study of UN Water on water dependency on all mitigation actions. So we need to know how much water is needed for both adaptation and mitigation, because it might become a significant challenge to share limited water resources amongst many options. So we are trying to start this activity from scientific point of view. We will also have WMO IRENA first report on renewable energy and climate effects on renewable energy and on the sources it needs. And finally, there will be also the Kigali Declaration from the Climate Open Science Conference, we just concluded. Of course, I should mention that IPCC, who is a body of WMO and UNEP, already released its assessment report, and it's very rich of confident conclusions, which again constitutes a body of science for the COP negotiations. In three big things I would like to mention, WMO would be pursuing at COP, helping members, helping countries in their implementation, and also helping presidency to pursue their goals. I really liked the people and nature life-centered climate action, because for WMO, saving lives was always most important objective in whatever we did. So we were really thrilled that COP27 recognized almost anonymously Early Warning for All initiative of UN Secretary General Guterres. It's a challenge for us to reach the global coverage of all people in the world by 2027, essentially less than 5 years, by the early warning systems. But it doesn't mean that we cannot do it. So at COP, we will be offering assistance to members to take further, more practical actions, how best to include early warnings and underlying science and observations into global stocktake, into goal on adaptation, and into other relevant work streams. We don't do it alone. We co-lead this initiative with agencies based in Geneva, ITU, UNDRR, IFRC, and many other institutions who came along to help us with that, but we need to scale financing. And we are rapidly doing assessments of the countries, of their readiness and capabilities in early warning system. We would urge countries to use these capabilities into the global stocktake metrics, but also in the global goal for adaptation, to have something like indicator on early warnings. Another thing I need to mention is water. It's been a breakthrough at COP27 when the Egyptian presidency in a covered decision recognized water as an important factor in adaptation, but there is more to say about that. All mitigation actions depend on water, and competition between different needs and water availability is unavoidable if we are not planning properly. So we will be offering the facts and figures and scientific assessments to start becoming water aware, how we do all the actions in mitigation adaptation. So we believe that would be helpful, because also the cryosphere, which is melting dramatically, is really a very, very big red flag for us right now. And finally, in my short intervention, I would like to mention the greenhouse gas watch system. Everyone knows that WMO is traditionally reporting on the concentrations of CO2, methane, and NOxes and other greenhouse gases concentration globally. But this is not enough for countries and for sectors to assess realistically the fluxes and natural sinks. So to really have a net effect of the sectors into the global greenhouse gas concentrations. For that, WMO Congress already endorsed the framework initiative, which we will be developing as a support tool to everyone to refine the mitigation actions. Thank you very much, and thanks for the huge partnerships and cooperation and support we have from both parties, members, and international organizations in Geneva and everywhere else. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Malenkova. We will now move to the Trade Community, and we are joined here by Ludivine Tamiotti, who is the head of the environmental section at the Trade and Environment Division of the World Trade Organization. Ludivine, you have now the floor.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for the invitation. I can remove this. Just to say a few words on WTO's contribution, which is the planned contribution for COP28. Before that, I mean, as you may note, climate change and trade has been the center of discussions in the Committee on Trade and Environment in the WTO. We have had discussions from both two angles, the impact of climate measures of members on trade, but also from the other side of the picture, and this other side more and more, I should say, how trade can contribute to climate mitigation and adaptation, how to use trade as a tool. And in this spirit, the WTO Secretariat is planning a number of contributions at COP28. I would distinguish them there in three types. First, and this is for the first time that we will have a trade day at a COP, at a UNFCCC COP, and with the strong support of the United Arab Emirates. The WTO Secretariat is co-leading with the UAE the preparation for that day. This will be done together with some other international organizations dealing with trade, UNCTAD, WEF, and ICC. The day will feature a series of high-level events on trade aspects with global leaders from government, business, and civil society to really advocate this notion that trade should be part of the solution, should be part of a just and ambitious global response to climate change. We'll have a number of events in this context, ranging from looking at how trade policy tools can help in promoting this global response to more specific topics like critical minerals. Trade Day will really offer, for the first time, an opportunity for members for countries, for delegates in a COP, so for climate delegates to discuss how trade can be part of the solution. Second, the WTO will host for the first time as well a Trade House Pavilion, together with other partners, ICC, ITC, and UNCTAD. And this is again a first in COP's history that the WTO with the trade agencies partner will have such a pavilion. We will be hosting in this context over 50 events over these 2 weeks of the COP. So this is offering us again a very good opportunity to showcase how trade can be a real and concrete part of the solution. Third, type of contribution of the WTO relates to knowledge building and concrete actions that we will be engaging in. So just give you a few examples. First, the WTO will be launching a publication, several publications, but I will mention two of them. One related to, called Trade Policy Tools for Climate Action. The idea is to showcase the most trade-related policies that governments are already using to implement climate goals and to enhance their contribution to climate change mitigation and adaptation. So these trade tools are meant as a source of inspiration to show how trade and trade measures and trade-related measures can be used to actually push for more positive contribution to climate mitigation. Another publication we will be launching is together with IRENA on international trade and green hydrogen. We are exploring for the first time the role of hydrogen produced from renewable power in supporting the global transition to low carbon energy and what trade policies can do to foster the development of green hydrogen markets. And finally, another positive sort of concrete contribution, WTO Secretariat will be joining over 20 standard-setting bodies, industry associations, companies, international organizations, and civil society in launching the Steel Standards Principles. This is done in the context of some work that the WTO has been carrying out starting earlier this year in the context of a trade forum for decarbonization standards in the steel sectors, and this will be a good way to contribute to near zero transition and minimize trade tension. This will be done with a group of international partners, including IEA, UNIDO, the Breakthrough Agenda, the World Steel Association. By way of conclusion, simply to say that this year we will really showcase how trade can be part of the solution to climate mitigation actions. And we hope that this will be an opportunity to outline to the climate community all the concrete elements that can be done in this context from a trade perspective. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Ms. Tamiotti. We'll now move to the health sector, and we are joined online by our colleague Marina Mayero from the Climate Change and Health Team at the World Health Organization. She's also joined by her colleague Alexandra Egorova, who will stay with us for the Q&A session. Marina, you have the floor.
Thank you, Diana. Can you hear me fine? Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Great.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Diana, and thank you, Geneva Environment Network, for inviting WHO to this important and very timely briefing. And sorry, I'm not with you. I'm in WHO buildings because after this call, we also have our internal briefing on COP28, and I need to join our Director General, Dr. Tedros. But as you mentioned, my colleagues, Alexandra will stay online. I see also we are joined by several COP28 presidency health people in this call, so I'm pretty sure there will be a lot of extra input in case questions are raising for the health sector. So Diana, let me start. I think the question you posed to all the agency is the challenge. If I may, I would love to start with an opportunity. WHO is super grateful and the health community is super grateful to this COP presidency because for the first time ever in the history of climate change negotiations, health has been receiving quite an incredible and meaningful attention. And for the first time ever, we will have an health day at COP, and the COP president, together with the Ministry of Health and Ministry of Foreign Affairs, UAE, and our Director General, Dr. Tedros, they extend an invitation to join this COP in Dubai to all the ministers of health and around the world. So I'm sure the Geneva mission colleagues are well aware because you received this information already back in September through a WHO dedicated briefing, and you also received the invitation. And the responses that we are receiving are really overwhelming. We have more than 60 ministers of health confirmed to come to Dubai for the 3rd of December. I share with Geneva Environment Network colleague a full brief pack that I wanted to present here, then I realized it's too much. And in 5 minutes, I cannot cover everything that the COP and the health community is organizing for this very important day for us. So I really hope this brief can be shared with all of you, and please have a look. If you have questions, come back to us. We are very happy to feed you with additional elements on all the high-level meetings that will happen during this day. But the most important meetings, if I may take these 5 minutes to emphasize, the most important meetings for us will be indeed the high-level ministerial roundtables that we organize at the end of the 3rd of December, the Health Day. In these health ministerials, we love to endorse and raise the profile of an important document that together with the UAE COP presidency, WHO, and many champion countries, we have developed a declaration on climate and health that we love everybody coming to COP. Thank you so much. It's super nice that you're sharing the key slide. Thank you. So this is the COP declaration on climate and health. As I mentioned, we developed this with champion countries, Brazil, Egypt, Fiji, Germany, India, Kenya, Malawi, and this, anyway, you can see all the names there. So far, this is an old slide. As of today, we have counted 39 countries has endorsed this declaration. So please, if we can use this opportunity with this briefing to remind all the missions that are aware of this declaration, they are also supporting, but they haven't taken the step of announcing the endorsement, to please contact the COP presidency as soon as possible to make sure your country can be added to this important moment in COP. So thank you very much. So for us, the big ask is the endorsement of this declaration and also confirmation of the presence of your minister. We already have, as I mentioned, lots of confirmation. I would love even more Minister of Health. So if any extra step is needed to support you, your country, to make sure your ministers will be with us in Dubai, please, again, feel free to contact us in WHO or the COP Health team directly. And since time is running, so I don't go through all this, the presentation, thanks to you, maybe you can stop sharing this slide. And please, also, if you can share the full document, the declaration that I also share with you, and this would be fantastic. I just take the last few seconds, minutes, to also inform you that we will have an health pavilion where we are going to host more than 40 health dedicated side events, and we have there the opportunity to also promote all the great collaboration we have with all the other UN agency and the health community. As Elena Malenkova mentioned from WMO, we have important big report coming out as the one that she mentioned on the State of Climate Service for Health, and many others, opportunity to promote joint collaboration among UN and with civil society and key partners. And we will have several health high-level events, but then maybe something very, very new we are bringing. I would love to invite all of you to alert your delegations to pay a special attention to an important installation that we are bringing this year, which is an installation of healthcare facility, solarized healthcare facility in collaboration with Psycho Foundation. And thanks again to the UAE presidency, we have the opportunity to exhibit what means invest in renewable energy for healthcare facility, what kind of high-level health quality services we can provide if good investment, the right investment is taken in investing on solarized healthcare facilities. So you can come and visit and you will experience what means not to have power, not to have energy in a healthcare facility, which is the case in more than 60% of healthcare settings around the world, in particular in African settings. And then what, just by installing a solar panel, you can get in terms of services. And so for us, this is an important message we want to bring from the health community. Investing on the right energy means improving health, it means addressing the climate issue, but also you will see the installation is also economically viable. Many other things, but I think I'm running out of time. But so super excited and looking forward to this COP, because as I mentioned at the beginning, for us it's quite special, and we really want to make this Health Day meaningful and impactful also on the overall climate negotiation process. So we really invite you to make sure your health representative will be there and connect with us, with the WHO and the health community, and make this day a successful one. Back to you, Diana.
Thank you very much, Marina, for these updates. And indeed, the document you mentioned will be available on the webpage of this event, as well as the video of the event, the summary, and a few other elements. So we'll now move to another important sector for International Geneva, which is the labor sector and the just transition. We have with us Mustafa Kamal Goye, who is the Director for Priority Action Program and Just Transitions towards Environmentally Sustainable Economies and Societies at the International Labour Organization. Mr. Goye, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Gianna, Excellencies. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm honored to be here with you this morning on behalf of the International Labour Organization. Gianna, you started by saying the words of the UN Secretary General that COP28 will be the space to close the climate ambition gap. So please allow me to state that ambition is not only about numbers. Ambition is really about people. It is about workers that have the right skills to change our energy systems, food, agriculture, and transport. It is about enterprises that are capable of innovating, investing in new production methods, and building new business models. And it is about communities that can diversify their economies and transform them, in particular those that are so much coal and fossil fuel dependent. And this is exactly why the Paris Agreement on climate change placed a just transition of the workforce and the creation of decent jobs as an imperative in tackling climate change. And this is also why the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, in its 6th assessment report that was published this year, noted that social justice, equity, and just transition are enablers of both mitigation and adaptation. Last year, COP27 resulted in a very important outcome, which is to start negotiations towards a UNFCCC work program on just transition. And as the UN Climate Secretary has said, COP28 will be the moment to concretize that work program on just transition. I wanted to remind delegates and excellencies that in this very building where we are in, and perhaps in the very room, in June this year, the International Labour Conference convened and had a general discussion on the topic of a just transition. The conference reminded us that ambitious climate action can be a positive narrative. Our estimates tell us that if countries go forward to implement the Paris Agreement in the energy sector only with renewables, energy efficiency, and electric vehicles, we can deliver an additional 24 million jobs by 2030. If a low-carbon economy goes hand in hand with a circular economy, it would be possible to generate 100 million jobs by 2030. This means that there is a positive narrative. Ambitious climate action is not a job killer. It is the opposite. It can deliver more and better jobs. However, the job gains are not going to be by default. They would require coherent policy frameworks that marry the climate ambition with the necessary social and economic dimensions. And this is again why the work program that parties will be negotiating in Dubai is going to be critical. The outcomes of the Labour Conference this year provide us with a solid basis to build upon. And this means that the work program that will come out of Dubai does not need to start from scratch. The conference this year reminded of the ILO guidelines for a just transition, which are a set of tripartite guidelines that were agreed upon by representatives of governments, employees, and workers' organizations. And the conference said that those guidelines are the reference framework and a basis for action on just transition. So finally, just transition is not only about the work program. It is going to be important in the adaptation agenda, in the mitigation agenda, on financing. And on financing, I would like to recall that COP27 resulted in a decision providing guidance to the Green Climate Fund to consider ways of financing for a just transition. We hope that COP28 will take that commitment forward. I wanted to end by saying that, like last year, this year the International Labour Organization, in collaboration with the European Commission, with the International Trade Union Confederation, the International Organization of Employers, and the UN Climate Secretariat, will host the Just Transition Pavilion, and we will have an opportunity for members to run a number of events to conduct informal diplomacy and partnership in that space. And finally, we are launching at the COP28, in collaboration with the Islamic Development Bank, a regional study on decarbonization in the energy sector and just transition for the MENA region. We hope that it will demonstrate what I said earlier, that there is a global positive narrative, and that is also possible in the Middle East, in the North Africa region, and that COP28 will be the moment to demonstrate that through innovation, through political leadership and ambition, we can take the climate agenda forward, at the same time promoting a decent work for all and advancing social justice. So we very much look forward to engaging at the COP, and Excellency, with your leadership, to be bringing the contribution of the world of work. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Gouillet. We will now move to another important pillar of international Geneva, which is the humanitarian and migration sector. We are joined today by Manuel Marques Pereira, who is Officer in Charge Director for Peace and Development Coordination at the International Organization for Migration. Mr. Marques Pereira, you have the floor.
Thank you. Good morning. Excellencies, dear guests and colleagues. I thank the organizers for the opportunity to be here today. IOM, as Humanitarian and Development Agency, has been for more than a decade an observer to the process of the United Nations Conference of the Parties for Climate Change. We have continuously advocated for the inclusion of human mobility dimensions within these processes and within the constituted bodies. We see with grave concern the trends and the foreseen increase in temperatures to a 3-degree ceiling that have been discussed early this week. Water scarcity, sea level rise, ecosystems degradations, floods, cyclones, and other triggers of mobility will continue to drive suffering and humanitarian needs, but also forced migration. It's vital that collectively we make mobility a choice, and that we avert, minimize, and address displacement while promoting safe adaptation. The lack of climate ambition will have a serious negative impact on populations and very dire humanitarian consequences. We need to advance more adaptation, but we also need to make sure it is done with resilience, with safe mobility, and with the right approaches to losses and damages. Only these will allow us to reduce the impacts and protect lives, but even with limited advances on mitigation and a hindered just transition, hope is possible, a better future is possible. We fully agree on the need to change the narrative on these questions. But regional, national, and global mobility pathways are thus an opportunity to accelerate adaptation and just transition. It is also necessary to advance efforts to scale up support and protection to communities at risk and to trap or immobile populations. Planned relocation is a question that looms in the horizon, for which we need collective systems to protect the rights of individuals. Climate justice and inherent human rights are only served if people can make safe and informed decisions about their mobility. COP28 is the COP to place people first, and we look forward to join all of you and others in advancing safer mobility and the prevention of displacement. I would invite you all to the Climate Mobility Pavilion at COP, where like-minded people will try to create opportunities, contacts, and advance the notion that people need to come first in face of the serious impacts of climate change. Thank you so much, and I look forward to see many of you and to have conversations today and at COP. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Mr. Marcos Pereira. Finance has been mentioned by many. We are joined today by the United Nations Environment Programme Finance Initiative, which Secretariat is here in Geneva. And though UNEP headquarters, you all know, are in Nairobi, Kenya, this gives me also the opportunity to acknowledge the important work done by other agencies that are not headquartered here in Geneva, but that have dynamic offices here doing important work also on the topic of climate. I see some of them here in the room. So the UNEP FI is represented here by Jessica Andrews, who is Head of Climate Accountability within the Secretariat. Jessica, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Excellencies, delegates, and colleagues, it's my pleasure to speak to you today about the United Nations Environment Programme Finance Initiative, which is the part of the United Nations Environment Programme that works with private financial institutions. We work with over 450 of the world's largest private financial banks and insurers, and 5,000 of the world's largest investors. We do this through the Principles for Responsible Banking, the Principles for Responsible Insurance, and the Principles for Responsible Investment. We work with these institutions to build their capacity to implement their operations and their investments in a more sustainable way. And increasingly, we work with them to help them facilitate climate finance and commit their portfolios to net zero by 2050, striving for a 1.5-degree world. Why do we do this? Traditionally, climate finance, as you all know, is referred to and referenced as overseas development assistance. This is typically flows from the global north to the global south, but increasingly from across the world into things like the Green Climate Fund, the $100 billion goal, the Just Energy Transition Partnerships, and bilateral climate projects. Yet we know that even if we are getting close to achieving the $100 billion goal last year, that this is insufficient. We need nearly $2 trillion annually to achieve a net zero global economy by 2050. We need the entire global financial architecture to commit to this goal. Article 2.1c of the Paris Agreement opened that door, and private financial institutions have walked through it. Over 650 banks, insurers, investors, and other financial players have now committed to transition their portfolios to net zero by 2050. We work with them through the Net Zero Alliances. UNEP supports 3 of these: the Net Zero Asset Owner Alliance for investors, the Net Zero Banking Alliance for banks, and the Net Zero Insurance Alliance. There is a willingness, and governments can capitalize on private sector's momentum. The private sector needs support and incentives for renewables, mandatory disclosure, and clear signals from policymakers. Our institutions have also released technical guidance on how to scale blended finance and support for emerging markets. And we urge you to look at these documents as you go into your deliberations. At COP28 this year, UNEP will have a pavilion where we will address topics of climate, nature, and pollution. And UNEP-FI will support the first Sustainable Financial Forum on December 6th, where we will speak with private sector and other delegates about the role of the private financial markets. This speaks to the presidency's second goal. Among these activities, we also have a global cooling pledge, and we invite all delegates here today to review this pledge. It supports refrigeration and cold chain supply, avoiding business as usual, and striving to limit warming. We'll put on the screen shortly a QR code that will support you in accessing more information about the pledge. With that, I yield back to the chair. Thank you.
Thank you very much. You can see indeed now on the screen the QR code you were mentioning. Let me just add here that as coordinated international action on cooling is necessary to keep a 1.5-degree temperature limit within reach, achieving the global cooling pledge targets would cut emissions by approximately 78 million tons carbon CO2 between 2022 and 2023. So as it was mentioned by Jessica, and I myself, for those who don't know, a UNEP staff member, UNEP now calls on everyone today to join the Global Cooling Pledge and mobilize your peers to make this COP a cool COP for the people and for the planet. And we were kindly asked by our colleagues to cordially invite you to endorse and join the Global Cooling Pledge by 29 November, so the day prior to the start of the COP. Instructions on how to submit endorsements can be found on the screen. So with that, let's move to another important sector for International Geneva, which is the human rights sector. And we are joined today by Benjamin Schachter, who is the leader of the environment team of the Office of the Higher Commissioner for Human Rights. Mr. Schachter, you have the floor.
Thank you, Diana, and to the previous speakers, Geneva Environment Network and the COP28 presidency for the invitation to be here today. Diana asked earlier for us to talk about barriers, and I want to start there. We've heard previously we're not on track, we need to do more. We've heard a lot of commitments. The reality is that these commitments fall far short. They fall far short of what's needed to protect human rights. And human rights obligations are legally binding. So one of the challenges in the climate space is consensus. Consensus makes it really difficult to achieve transformative change. And that's what we need. We need a change. We need to phase out fossil fuels. Fossil fuels kill people. They do it a number of ways. Their extraction leaves a toxic imprint on the earth and a scar. Their extraction harms people. The combustion of fossil fuels contributes to 7 million premature deaths each year from air pollution. And the combustion of fossil fuels leads to climate change. So we need to talk simply and clearly about those things, which is why the Secretary General has described what we're doing right now as opening the gates of hell. Those are his words, not mine. We have to move away from fossil fuels, and we have to do it rapidly. We heard from Mustafa about a just transition. A just transition is a fast one. And it's one that benefits people and communities most affected by climate change, not the businesses that have perpetuated the climate crisis. We need a just transition, and we're excited to contribute to a discussion of the just transition at COP28. The Human Rights Council has, for many years, prepared an annual resolution on climate change. Our office, in carrying out the activities mandated by that resolution, has produced a large number of reports and studies about climate change and its impacts on the rights of people, and about the human rights obligations that states and businesses and other duty bearers have to address climate change. And one thing I want to make very clear is that those obligations are legally binding, that they are stronger than and require more urgent action than what has been committed to in the Paris Agreement, and that we're still falling short of, as an international community, even the action needed to achieve the objectives of the Paris Agreement. So we also know from the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change and its 6th assessment report that rights-based climate action is more effective and more sustainable. One of our priorities in these negotiations is ensuring they are inclusive and participatory, and that the voices of the people affected by climate change are heard. And the reality is that in the UNFCCC process, all too often, observers don't have an opportunity to participate directly, to contribute and to speak. And that is a problem. We are very interested in the outcome of the first global stocktake. This may be the first global stocktake, but it's also likely to be the last that takes place before we eclipse 1.5 degrees of warming. It's the last opportunity to make a major course correction and to keep 1.5 alive, and in doing so to prevent this human rights catastrophe that is climate change from getting even worse. So we've called for the global stocktake to include a clear call for the equitable phase out of all fossil fuels in line with a sustainable and evidence-based pathway to limit global heating to no more than 1.5 degrees Celsius, a commitment to rights-based climate action, and the respect, protection, and fulfillment of all human rights, including the right to a clean, healthy, and sustainable environment, a long-term vision for mobilizing resources, including finance for mitigation, adaptation, and loss and damage in line with the principles of equity and common but differentiated responsibilities and respective capacities, as well as state human rights obligations, including to ensure all those affected by climate change have access to effective remedy, a commitment to ensuring human rights guardrails for all climate action, including environmental and social safeguards, consultative and participatory processes, and independent redress mechanisms. Recognition of the importance of and a commitment to the free, meaningful, active, safe, and informed participation of diverse stakeholders, civil society, women, children, and indigenous peoples, including those most affected by climate change in climate decision-making, and a commitment to a rapid, equitable, and just transition, which will help prevent human rights harms and advance the rights of workers in the formal and informal economies, as well as those of the people and communities most affected by climate change. These commitments relate to other key agenda items which will be discussed, including loss and damage, Article 6.4 on carbon markets, participation, the global goal on adaptation, resource mobilization. All of this needs to be informed by human rights. In order to help advance these objectives and the priorities of the Office of the High Commissioner for Human Rights himself has issued an open letter that was on 15 November to all member states outlining OHCHR priorities and his priorities for rights-based climate action. We're also in the course of celebrating the 75th anniversary, or commemorating the 75th anniversary of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. And we've made climate change and the right to a clean, healthy, and sustainable environment a key part of that commemoration and ongoing discussion. The Office has issued new, along with ILO, new key messages on human rights and just transition, as well as key messages on human rights and loss and damage. We will be supporting the participation of more than 10 Human Rights Council appointed experts to COP28, as well as fielding a small delegation of our own to engage in direct advocacy and organize events related to human rights and climate change at COP28. COP28 is the opportunity for a course correction. It is the opportunity to keep 1.5 alive. And we hope that we can work with all of you to help achieve that.
Thank you, Mr. Schachter. We'll now move to another sector. Nature conservation is also an important topic in International Geneva. We have an important hub in Gland, where the International Union for the Conservation of Nature is based, also known as IUCN. We are joined today by Sandeep Sengupta, who is the Global Policy Lead for Climate Change at IUCN. Mr. Sengupta, you have the floor.
Thank you, Diana. Ambassador Al-Musharraf, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen. At the outset, let me begin by thanking the Permanent Mission of the UAE and the Geneva Environment Network for organizing today's important briefing. On behalf of our 1,400 plus members around the world, which include over 200 states and government agencies, including the government of the UAE, Egypt, and several of you who are in the room today, IUCN is very happy to be participating in this session. As many of you will know, IUCN is also honored that our president, Her Excellency Razan Al Mubarak, is the UN high-level champion for climate change from the UAE COP28 presidency, and is playing a central role in bringing together non-state actors and actions across various thematic areas in support of the Paris Agreement under the Marrakesh Partnership. From IUCN's perspective, this is a very important COP, and we are keen to see strong outcomes and commitments emerge from Dubai. In our position paper for COP28, we have highlighted 10 key messages. These are listed on our website, iucn.org/COP28, and I would invite all of you to go through them. I will not go through them all now, but maybe I will highlight some of the key areas that IUCN is keen to see progress on in Dubai. Firstly, keeping the 1.5 goal alive. The IPCC 6th assessment report has brought into sharp focus the increased losses and damages that both people and nature around the world are facing today. Meeting this temperature rise target is therefore critical for minimizing future losses and damages. This requires, in our view, rapid and deep emission reductions across all sectors of the global economy, including the time-bound phase-out of all fossil fuels within a framework that ensures a just transition. Secondly, several speakers today have already alluded to the importance of the global stocktake. In our view, too, it is critical for the success of the Paris Agreement that strong and clear outputs emerge from this first global stocktake, and that concretely results in parties and governments submitting more ambitious nationally determined contributions, or NDCs, in 2025. Thirdly, the reinforcement of biodiversity climate linkages. In the last two COPs, there has been a stronger recognition that the climate change and the biodiversity loss crisis are not two different crises, but part of a single crisis that are deeply interlinked and therefore need to be addressed in an integrated manner. We are keen to see this recognition reinforced within key COP28 decisions as well, whether it be pertaining to the global stocktake or within the mitigation work program or within the Glasgow to Sharm el-Sheikh global goal on adaptation. We are also keen to see the promotion of greater operational synergies across all the three Rio conventions. For example, between the NDCs of the Paris Agreement and the NBSAPs of the National Biodiversity Strategies and Action Plans of the CBD. Also bearing in mind the targets that were adopted under the Kunming-Montreal Global Biodiversity Framework last year. We would equally also encourage all parties to encourage concrete and ambitious nature-based solutions, not only within their NDCs, but also within their national adaptation plans and their long-term strategies, bearing in mind the multiple societal benefits that healthy ecosystems provide. Fourthly, IUCN is calling for greater commitments at COP28 on scaled-up global climate finance across the entire continuum of mitigation, adaptation, and loss and damage, with an increased proportion being made directly available for indigenous peoples and local communities, noting their role as key stewards and custodians of the world's most intact and important ecosystems. We also underscore the importance of inclusive and equitable climate policy and action, and stress that the outcomes at COP28 have to take into account the needs, priorities, concerns, and rights of the most vulnerable, particularly indigenous peoples, women, and youth. Finally, we support the accelerated deployment of renewable energy systems to meet the climate challenge, but call for these to be implemented in an ecologically and socially appropriate manner that ensures a just transition and avoids negative impacts on ecosystems and local communities. We also caution against any reliance on unproven, untested, and unregulated geoengineering technologies to solve the climate crisis. So these are some of the key policy messages that we are prioritizing from our side. In addition, IUCN will also be hosting a Unite for Nature pavilion in the Blue Zone at COP28 to bring together all our members, constituents, and partners. Over the 2 weeks of the COP, we will be organizing over 80 side events and 12 receptions across the various topics that we work on. So if you are going to Dubai, we invite you to visit our pavilion and join us. We are also actively supporting some of the nature-related initiatives of the UAE presidency and the high-level champions, for example, the mangrove breakthrough and the ocean breakthrough, building on the launch of the ENACT initiative. So this was an initiative on enhanced nature-based solutions for accelerated climate action that was launched at COP27 last year, co-chaired by the Egyptian presidency and Germany. We will also be launching a State of Nature-Based Solutions report at COP28 during Nature Day. Lastly, in conclusion, we are also honored to be supporting the UNFCCC Secretariat in selecting the winner of the UN Global Climate Action Award for Youth and Indigenous Peoples in the Nature category, which aims to spotlight some of the innovative action that young people across the world are undertaking today. I thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Sengupta. Let's move to private sector. We have various institutions engaging with private sector in Geneva. Today, we are joined by Women Business, who is represented by Andrew Prague, who is the Managing Director for Policy at the Women Business. Andrew, you have the floor.
Thank you very much. Excuse me. Ambassador, Excellencies, distinguished colleagues, it's a great pleasure to be able to address you this morning on behalf of the We Mean Business Coalition and more broadly, the private sector. We Mean Business is an international NGO working with the world's most influential businesses to drive more action on climate change. We were formed nearly 10 years ago now as a coalition of 7 of the world's leading business organizations focusing on climate. We now have a network of NGOs around the world and thousands of businesses subscribe to our various initiatives. Our theory of change is that by bringing in front of policymakers evidence that businesses are really ambitious and taking action on climate change, we give confidence to those policymakers to make more stringent, more ambitious policies, and in turn that drives more business action in a positive cycle, which we call the ambition loop. We are indeed headquartered here in Geneva, so we work a lot with the Geneva-based institutions where there are touch points on business and climate change, for example, on trade, on health, on science, on nature and finance, and so on. And we also, of course, work with the other Geneva-based business organizations, such as our core partner, the World Business Council on Sustainable Development, as well as the World Economic Forum and others. So since before the Paris Agreement, We Mean Business has been bringing this ambitious business voice into the UNFCCC process and all of the COPs since then. And we're consistently calling for greater ambition, more clarity, and a focus on the implementation of policies and accountability. And it's going to be no different this time at COP28. At this COP, we will again be running the Business Pavilion, another pavilion, we've heard about a few others. And this will be a hub to bring together business leaders and policymakers throughout events and roundtables. So we welcome you and your colleagues there. There will be coffee. At this COP, the stakes are, of course, extremely high, as has been said many times already. Before I come back to our priorities for this COP, just quickly to say that at the We Mean Business Coalition, we're keeping a firm look on beyond this COP as well. So from a business perspective, what really matters are the policies and regulations that are implemented domestically in countries around the world and how they interact with each other. And those policies are driven by, and in some cases also act to drive, the nationally determined contributions that countries make under the Paris process. So we at the Coalition have a clear midterm focus on making sure that the new NDCs that will be submitted by COP30 in 2025 will see a step change in ambition in line with course correcting and keeping the door to 1.5 degrees alive. And so we're working with business communities and capitals around the world to achieve that. So this COP is really a step on the road towards that moment of the NDCs. Coming back to this COP, COP28, starting already next week, we certainly subscribe to many of the priorities that have been raised by colleagues already around just transition and finance and the integration with nature and the climate process. And I just add 3 quick points on what we see as priorities from our business colleagues coming into this COP. The first one is a clear signal for the end of the fossil fuel era. We really applaud the efforts made so far to secure backing for these global renewable energy and energy efficiency targets. And in that regard, we call on governments to implement the underlying policies to make them happen. For example, streamlined permitting process, more investment in power grids, and so on. But the data and experience has shown that growth in clean energy is not enough by itself. We absolutely have to address the question of fossil fuel use and production. And that end, we must have a clear agreement on fossil fuel phase-out at this COP to ensure that the fossil fuel era is ending. Through the We Mean Business Coalition, we're showing that business around the world wants this. We're bringing to the COP a new, large and high-profile campaign, which is a movement we call Fossil to Clean, which is currently around 170 demand-side businesses that are pushing governments to take faster action on fossil fuel phase-out. And this campaign also sets out clear principles of how to get there. Many of the CEOs of these companies will be speaking out about this in Dubai. That was our first one, is the fossil to clean. The second priority is around the global stocktake. Our view is that we really need a decision that is forward-looking and which concretely signals the course correction we need to bring the global economy on track with 1.5. From a business perspective, we call on the stocktake to set the framework for new ways that governments and businesses can work together strategically in smaller groups and around key strategic sectors. This was a key finding from our own corporate climate stocktake, which brought together the views of hundreds of businesses about what they see as needing to overcome from policy barriers. And thirdly, and lastly, we want to see from this COP progress on the UNFCCC's framework for recognition and accountability for non-state actors, in particular to make sure that it's really fit for purpose and that it builds on, rather than duplicates, the very complex and already quite effective pre-existing landscape of accountability initiatives out there, notably for the business sector. So with that, I will close. Thank you for your attention, and I look forward to seeing you at the Business Pavilion in Dubai. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Prague. And last but not least, in the list of speakers today is the representative from civil society. We are joined by Francesca Mingrone, who is a staff attorney at the CIEL, the Center for International Environmental Law here in Geneva. She's also representing here the Geneva Climate Change Consultation Group, known as GECO, which includes various NGOs that are very active on climate change in international Geneva. Mrs. Mingrone, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Diana. As you say, the GECO is a coalition of civil society organizations working in Geneva on the intersection of human rights and climate change, and we really try to uplift the demands of communities on the ground that are really feeling the most dire impacts of climate change. A lot has been said about priorities for COP. Human rights, of course, encompasses all agenda items, but I'll try to be brief and identify key priorities, also building on what Mr. Schachter already very eloquently highlighted in terms of what we need this COP to achieve to really address the climate crisis. First of all, loss and damage. We've heard about the urgency of the climate crisis, what's happening across the world and how the impacts are felt. We heard, of course, that last year the COP importantly adopted a loss and damage fund. This was a demand from developing countries and civil society organizations for decades. So we definitely welcome these developments, and the COP28 is supposed to adopt the recommendations that have been drafted by the Transitional Committee throughout this year. Yet, we're concerned that some of the elements of the current text are not ambitious enough, and there are still a lot of open questions that remained unanswered. Starting from the location of the fund, that currently it seems that it will be hosted by the World Bank. We don't think that this is an arrangement that will be helpfully serving vulnerable communities and countries. Instead, we would really like to see, also in line with what developing countries are asking, to have a standalone institution under the UNFCCC. The question of who should pay, of course, currently there is no obligation to pay. We need this fund to be operational, but also to be adequately funded. So clear obligations in that sense would be needed. And there are no strong references to human rights in the governing instrument of the fund. This means that there is no explicit guidance on the Loss and Damage Fund board on how to operate in a human rights compliant way. If we think about the power that the board has, this is definitely a gap that needs to be filled. The composition of the board also is an issue because currently it does not include non-party seats. The board has the power to invite non-party representatives as active observers, but we think that having non-parties seats on the board would actually be necessary. And finally, questions around safeguards and independent grievance mechanisms. It might happen that activities funded under the Loss and Damage Fund might actually undermine human rights, and it's necessary that strong safeguards in terms of environmental integrity, human rights are put in place, and also that a redress mechanism is available in case such violations occur. So for the COP, we hope that any decision taken on loss and damage will provide to fill the gaps that are currently in the text and resolve these unanswered questions. On carbon markets, we know from past experiences, also the data tell us that carbon markets trading in emission credits does not help reducing emissions. It can actually undermine human rights and even lead to increased emissions and open the door to false solutions. So given that carbon markets have the potential to undermine human rights, but they're still going to be operationalized, parties really need to put in place the utmost caution and really ensure environmental integrity, transparency, participation of affected communities, and overall the respect and fulfillment of human rights of communities and indigenous peoples. And these also include having very stringent rules regulating carbon markets and, once again, creating an independent grievance mechanism. On fossil fuels, a lot has been said, and Mr. Schachter helpfully highlighted the impacts not just that fossil fuels have on climate change as the root causes of it, but also on environment, broadly speaking, and on human health. And so far, the UNFCCC has shied away from effectively addressing the role of fossil fuels in the climate crisis and parties' obligations to really tackle the root causes. So we hope that COP28 will adopt a commitment for all countries to rapidly and equitably phase out all fossil fuels, so not just unabated fossil fuels, and all fossil fuel subsidies. Of course, bearing in mind that developed countries have an obligation to provide adequate finance for developing countries to achieve human rights-based just transition. Last but not least, civic space. We know that public participation must be protected and promoted to ensure equitable and ambitious outcomes at the COP. This applies on two dimensions. On one hand, really protecting the civil and political rights of those that engage in UNFCCC processes, and more broadly in the implementation of the Paris Agreement. Some serious concerns have been raised, even so that in June, the subsidiary body on implementation adopted a conclusion reminding that it's essential that human rights of all participants to climate negotiations are protected, and also protection against corporate capture in the process. We need to be conscious of the fact that a growing number of corporate lobbyists, that representative of the private sectors, are getting official roles in the process, for instance, in the context of the Global Stocktake, and we also read reports in the media about the role of the Abu Dhabi National Oil Company in the preparation of the COP. So this is something to be aware of. And we call on parties to actively insist on the importance of really upholding rights in the context of these talks and remaining vigilant throughout these and future climate conferences with regards to any form of harassments and closure of civil society space. Very final words. We would really like to reiterate the importance and imperative of upholding human rights and international humanitarian law to ensure climate justice and a just global community. This is especially relevant for the international Geneva that we all belong to, and we really hope that actors here in Geneva will contribute to carrying and elevating these principles in all relevant fora, including the COPs. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Mingerone. We are very close to 12, and I know that this event really needs to call at 12 due to other commitments of our co-hosts. I am very sorry, but I think I will have to take the decision of not permitting to have a Q&A session. Nevertheless, as we have the habit of doing that at our events, stay with us after the closing remarks by His Excellency for exchanging bilaterally around a coffee outside or here in the room. So with not further ado, I'm turning to you, Excellency, for some closing remarks at this event. You have heard that you will have a lot of pavilions, a lot of people to meet in Dubai when you will be joining. The floor is yours, Excellency.
Thank you, dear moderator. And yes, of course, we'll have time to discuss with each other bilaterally here and leading up to COP and at COP, hopefully, for those there and those there virtually. I'd like to thank you, Madam Moderator, and the panelists for their insightful and specialized interventions. I learned a lot just from these 2 hours of listening to the people around the table. And as mentioned by the moderator, the table may not be able to fit all the experts, and I would argue this chamber may not be able to fit all the experts, but I also assure you the expo site, I think, may be able to have all the experts, both physically and virtually, of course, as mentioned in the logistical update. I found the conversations today to be both invigorating and encouraging. We've heard about the various themes, pavilions, days dedicated to various themes and thematics ranging from health to human rights and climate, to biodiversity, to just transition, businesses. And in that vein, we urge the support of our declarations during COP28 that were mentioned by my dear colleague, His Excellency Majid Suwaidi. Let our collective international Geneva presence positively contribute to having tangible outcomes for the good of future generations and us and our expertise in multilateralism. I know I'm new to this. I was previously in New York, so I was exposed to many of these topics. Our expertise here in Geneva, our collective expertise as organizations, as different stakeholders, is key to making any outcome, any tangible outcome possible. And we look forward to next week. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Excellency. Thank you, to your team, for helping us setting up this event. Thank you to all the panelists, to their teams who also work hard to prepare the contributions of today. Thank you for the audience here. As it was mentioned earlier, the video of the event and the summary will be made available on the webpage of the event, and you have the URL available on the screen. Thank you also to the conference services and to all those we haven't mentioned here. And good luck to you, Excellency, to your colleagues in Dubai, and to all those who will be joining you to make COP28 a success. Thank you.